All right. So just wanted to start with an update on life. So I discovered these. Well, I've known about them for a while, but they're called um, the eight key breaths. And they were taught by a person named Edward J. Dingle, actually here in Los Angeles about 100 years ago. He's one of the first Westerners in Tibet to have stayed in Tibet for any period of time. He wrote a book called Across China on Foot, and yeah, spent like 20 years in the East. And when he came, he was originally from the United Kingdom, and during his time in Asia, he learned these breathing practices, and eventually came to the United States and to Los Angeles and began teaching them. Master Chokuk Soy, the founder and inventor of pranic healing, arhatic yoga, he modified these breaths uh, probably 20 years back, and they're used. The modification, the short version, is used in pranic healing and arhatic yoga um, all over the world. So the original 8 breaths takes 45 or 50 minutes, and the modifications that Master Cho made, you could do them in 9 minutes. And his modifications stated that it allows for much more prana to be generated much quicker by utilizing the pubococcyx muscle, like doing a Kegel after the 3rd breath. So I started doing the original 8 key breaths, and they're incredible. It's like, wow, I wish I had started doing this practice much earlier. Buddhism, in its philosophy, at least in Theravada, kind of has body negation as a central theme. If you look at the physical health of many Theravada monks and nuns, you'll find that it's generally not too fantastic. It's the ascetic path, and more in the spirit of negating the physical body. And yeah, that's basically the essence of it. There's just not much taken care of, and work that happens in that area. Yeah, so started doing the 8 key breaths, highly impressed. The affirmations are a little, I mean, they're very Christian, very I am based. So I don't completely um, jive with them, but they're fine. So, and I can see how by doing those affirmations, you really come to a place of profound mental power and spiritual power and vitality, which is really the point of the whole exercises. So I started doing these, and because these breaths are so old, there's certain parts of the visualization, certain parts of the practices where he doesn't. The founder Edwin Dingle doesn't explain what exactly is being done. So, like in one of the breaths, he tells you to visualize a fire at the base of the spine, going up the spine to the crown. That's the Kundalini fire. Doesn't use that word. He even does the microcosmic orbit. The In Taoism, that's the flow of energy up the spine and down the conception meridian that goes down the front of the body, and circulating the energy that way generates vitality and accumulates chi. So it's so early that none of those terms were used at the time. So it's very interesting to do the practice, and yeah, I'm feeling the benefits, and it's wonderful. It takes 45 minutes, but it's physically involved for sure. It's not like a subtle watching the breath practice. You could do watching the breath after the fact, but this is very much involved. So I'll probably be talking about it more. Surely I will be talking about it more as the weeks and months unfold. I'm starting my mornings with that practice now, and it's a wonderful way to start. It really energizes the brain, bounces chi throughout the entire body, and just puts you definitely a place of power. So this is the update. I posted this on the Awakening to Reality Facebook group, so I'll share it with everyone here. So I wrote 90-day cycle since the breakthrough is over. Duality has not reemerged. Reactive mind is there, like getting annoyed, but doesn't come from anywhere. Recently have taken some major hits and losses in personal life. There's a correction in the stock market 40 days ago or so. I lost half a year's of work in a couple hours and even had some major conflicts happen professionally. Probably would have hurt a lot more a year ago, but I was surprisingly okay. Seems I don't experience affliction as something that happens to a me anymore. It just happens. I notice that suffering is actually, for the most part, more acute than it used to be, in the sense that there's no resistance to it now. It doesn't last after it arises. No internal commentary after the fact. Seems nothing comes from anywhere. The ATR map is quite correct in that 100 days ago, with the collapse of the subject object split, that appearances seem more vivid and even more real than before. It's like life in HD, which I say is still the case, but now there's a clear sense of illusoriness that is becoming prominent. Presence is certainly empty, and per ATR instructions, presence is experienced as absence. So radically different from the witness stage and even the initial breakthrough 100 days ago. There's a growing understanding and perception that nothing is substantial. Thought is empty and can't be found. Feeling is empty and can't be found. Sensation is empty, can't be found. Visual and auditory perceptions are empty, can't be found. No internal or external. That has been permanent. I've even tried to experience duality. I've attempted to experience duality. Tried to re-experience separation. Doesn't work. Was sick with COVID for a month. No effect on the natural state. Even suffering and pain is empty presence. About 3 weeks ago, received advice to understand emptiness and non-arisen, so I've begun on that. I drove up from LA to San Francisco to meet Peter Brown, the author of Yoga of Radiant Presence, in person. I asked him a few questions and his answers were pretty good. I asked him to explain emptiness and non-arising. His answer is summarized by the quote, "If there are no objects, how can they arise?" I also asked him about the difference between experiencing duality and non-duality. His response was that neither could be found, so comparisons are useless. He's very much the do nothing, there's nothing to be done, nothing can be done because nothing is ever done kind of guy. Which in my opinion, for people at later stages, can be useful, but I suspect most people who listen to him don't understand what he's saying when he's talking about the no here, no now level of insight. A person at the lunch meet said, "This is too non-dual for me." Anyway, so reality is more or less a superhuman experience at this point. Perceptions are so vivid, clear, crisp, yet now this sense of empty and illusory is beginning to permeate experience. The sense of the sound I'm hearing is not there. The words I'm saying aren't said. Nothing can be found or pinpointed. No subject and no object initially was the craziest thing ever, but now it's normal. I notice things get pretty miraculous, very maha, which is great, very quickly. If my eyes are open, if I'm outside walking, for example. The degree of moment to moment continuity, recognition, or mindfulness still isn't too impressive. Most of the day, attention is absorbed in work or whatever it is I'm doing. Emptiness really is different. I'm beginning to understand why this is the insight necessary for liberation. Everything being free, open, spontaneous, and empty. It certainly wasn't possible in the I am everything phase, when everything is perceived as self. And even past that, when the background isn't a self, but is still perceived as a substance, perceived as substantial. Looking back, it feels very strange finding ATR while in earlier phases and after collapse of the foreground background split, seeing how clearly thusness's phases matched up with how things unfolded. I spent 3 or 4 years oscillating between I am and I am everything / one mind. It's much more natural now. Still haven't read the full ATR guide, so forgive me if I mix up phases and use terminology incorrectly here. If anyone has further advice on emptiness and non-arisen, please share. I've read some articles on the blog already on that, but I'm continuing to review them. So that's it as far as that's concerned. Awakening to Reality.com is where I read John Tan's commentary explanation of the lines in the Bahia Sutta. In the seen, there's only the seen, and the heard, there's only the heard. In the cognized, there's only the cognized. And after I read his commentary, haven't experienced duality since that day. So I highly recommend that blog and Thusness's 7 phases of awakening. And he clearly states that the phases are not definitive. When I spoke with him personally, he said it's better to see them as phases to overcome or to dispel the illusion of self, as opposed to actual stages of awakening, because they're not definitive. They are based on his personal experience and the experience of other practitioners, as opposed to scripture, for example. But fascinating thing about ATR and about John Tan's stages, Thusness's stages, that even before I found the blog, that the initial 3 or 4 stages is exactly how it unfolded and progressed for me. There's initially experience of presence, or like the realization, the recognition of presence. That presence opened up into the experience of I am everything. And that proceeded into a kind of foreground, background oscillation. And eventually, after 4 years, into realization of selflessness and anatta, no self. So it's heavy Buddhist terminology, but if you're willing to do some Googling for terms that you don't understand or ask around, it's definitely one of the best blogs on the internet. So I refer to it very often. And that particular community on Facebook, there's like 40 or 50 people in it, in the whole group. It's about 1,000 people, and 50 plus of them have all been through some pretty profound unfolding and phases of awakening. So is there anything else? The breath stuff is promising. There's something about it. I think for a long time now, I haven't really taken care of the physical body, and started to catch up to me last week. And I just thought, you know what, I gotta make a change. It's too young to be tired. So yeah, so that's progressing along, and I'll let everyone know how the breath work unfolds and how the meditation unfolds. Still doing Dhammakaya practice, just not as much. And the abbot did ask everyone to start meditating 2 hours a day. So I will be commencing that as well. But yeah, he let the whole temple know, please, everyone meditate at the center of the body for a couple hours a day, and dedicate the merits, have the intention that conflict be resolved and there be peace in the world. So that's the update for today. I know I'm supposed to do this every day, but sometimes I get home late and I just don't want to do it at midnight. So doing what I can, but tomorrow I'll definitely do one. I'll do one from the temple. Actually, I'll be emceeing for the full moon meditation. So at Azusa Dhammakaya. So I'll share the link for that in the WhatsApp group for all the class participants. And that is it. Hope you all have a wonderful Thursday, and that you meditate at some point today. And see you tomorrow.